They're so bad. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 5th Future Focus 203 Community Engagement Workshop session. We thank those who are returning as a regular Future Focus 203 participant and welcome those who are joining us for the first time. My name is Kathy Ruiz, and my co-chair for Future Focus 203 project is Mark Trimbacki. We are joined here by a group of dedicated community members working with us to help guide this process in a meaningful and productive manner. At this time, we would like all of our facilitating team members to wave a hand and identify themselves. There's some back here. It is important to remind ourselves that Future Focus 203 is a community engagement program intended to solicit the hopes, ideas, and thoughtful suggestions of its school district stakeholders, its public, through meaningful dialogue and discussion. I think it is important for us to remind ourselves where we have been and where we have gone on this journey. So let me provide a brief recap of previous sessions before we get into the discussion on facilities. In the first session of our community engagement program, we began with a thorough report outlining the current status of District 203. That report revealed some information that both surprised and concerned us. We discovered District 203 was experiencing and would continue to experience significant demographic changes. We realized that student performance, especially on traditional testing measures, was not what we had been used to in the past in our district. We also learned that in the future, we need to continue to be sensitive to maintaining financial stability and provide optimal learning environments. This helped us formulate the set of topics we would cover as we proceeded through the remaining 4 engagement sessions. Findings from the first session led to considerable discussion about what does student success really mean in District 203, causing us to focus on this topic in Community Engagement Session 2. Participants, including students, through a process to identify top indicators of success for students and make recommendations regarding how to best assess and report student progress based on those indicators. Session 2 participants were given a list of 36 words or phrases that are indicators of student success. Work groups were asked to identify their top 10 indicators in order of ranking. The top 10 words or phrases from each group were used to create a Wordle, a graphic visualization highlighting the popular or trending terms based on frequency of use and prominence. Shown on the screen is the composite from the evening and morning sessions. You will see from this list that our community of learners place great value on college and career readiness, personal, social, and academic growth, and the strands of the district mission statement. Groups were also asked to use their top 10 indicators and craft a brief statement in the form of a tweet using just about 140 characters. All the tweets are on the website, and we encourage you to take the time to read them. In our third session, we examined our programs of study, receiving feedback regarding which programs we should continue, refresh, start, or stop. And our fourth session covered finances. In this session, we received a great tutorial on how the district funds its activities. And now Mark will talk to you a little bit about the findings from Community Engagement Session 4. Okay, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. 3 key findings emerged from our Community Engagement Session number 4 on finances. First, we are fortunate that District 203 is in a very enviable financial position. A number of participants at those sessions acknowledged this and commended district leadership for making good decisions in the management of district funds, while continuing to provide exemplary education for District 203 students. Participants also acknowledged that state and federal funds for District 203 were uncertain at best. It's important to know the district does not rely heavily on state and federal funds, but any progress made in the district must result from the local investment of District 203 residents. Finally, participants noted that as changes continue to occur in the district and as the district moves forward with any new initiatives for student success, it could pose a challenge for the district budget. Note that this work session is on facilities and will be focused on the results and reaching consensus on, or collective decisions as a group. This session also concludes our scheduled topics. Findings from community engagement sessions 1 through 5 provide the basis for drafting recommendations to be reviewed by participants at our final session in November. Our final community engagement session will bring together all the great discussion and ideas to date as we prepare to present recommendations to the Board of Education on December 16th. We hope you can join us in early November to once again provide your insights and ideas. Just a quick reminder, all Future Focus 203 information, materials, and documents, including video from previous sessions, get posted on the district website. You can go to www.naperville203.org homepage and click on the Future Focus logo. You can also stay connected with Future Focus proceedings through Facebook and Twitter. Speaking a little bit of media, please know that District 203 has partnered with NCTV to document the community engagement process. The cameras, mics, and the people operating them are members of our team. They are collecting information for a Future Focus documentary that will be shared with the community in January 2014. When talking in your small groups, the cameras will be rolling, so please continue your conversation if they approach your table. We've planned a pretty tight agenda for each of the sessions, including this evening. Since we have a lot to cover in a short period of time, it will be important that we do not interrupt the presenters with any questions. If you do have questions for the presenters or other Future Focus 203 representatives, will be circulating among the tables and available to respond to your questions during the small work group time. If you have questions that may or may not be directly related to the topic of facilities, there are also some cards on your table. I have a question comment card for you to use. If you have a question and we're not able to respond to it, please complete one of those cards. You can also call or send an email. And lastly, hopefully you have registered using the computer provided on your table. Please make sure that everyone at the table has registered so that we can, this is our way of tracking attendance at each session and having your contact information to keep you informed of future events and proceedings. So now we'll get into the main topic, and to help us explore the answer to our question, do we have the capacity and resources to prepare our students for success, specifically with regard to facilities? We have invited representatives from White & Company Architects to help provide the background information for this session. But first, I would like to invite Dan Bridges, our superintendent, to provide some introductory comments and introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Well, good evening. We had to know it was going to rain tonight because Future Focus was scheduled. So I don't know what it is with me and rain or this remote, but I apologize. But thank you, and thank you once again for your continued participation and involvement in Future Focus 203. I'm extremely grateful, and I know the Board of Education is as well, on your continued involvement and support of our schools. Tonight's session is an important session because essentially what this is going to do is kick off a process for us as a school community to talk about our facility priorities. We've talked about over these sessions many things that are important to all of us. We've talked about the importance of success and what it really means to be successful. You have provided us with input on important parts of our programs of study. In our last community engagement session, you provided us with your input on what you consider to be important related to the world of finances. This evening, you're going to weigh in on facilities. Your input will be one driver in determining our priorities throughout facility planning. In our first community engagement session way back in March, as a community, you identified many things that concern you or are important to you related to our actual buildings where we educate our students. Those items were documented in the verbatim transcripts and the executive summaries from that session. You're going to be reintroduced to those later tonight. In advance of our presentation this evening, I'm going to invite you to consider your own individual priorities related to each of our facilities. On your tables, you should find a stack of note cards. Some are purple, some are blue, some may be other colors. If you'd grab one of those, and if you don't have a note card or grab a note card, you could do it in your packet. But I'm going to ask you to do a quick individual activity. It's going to allow you to kind of really bring to the front of your mind your thinking about facilities as they relate to our schools. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask that you answer that question individually on your note card. And that's a tough activity for you to do because I'm going to ask you to do it by yourself without talking. When you consider the question, I want you to answer it as though you were speaking about any school in our community. Not just necessarily the one individual school where your child may go, but any school in our community. So we should be able to take what you write on your card and apply to any school. And I'm only going to give you about 60 seconds to think about this and write that. So if you do that and jot down on your card, when considering all of our facilities, what is your most important priority, ensuring that all students have access to the same level of services? When considering all of our facilities, what is your most important priority in ensuring that all students have access to the same level of services? Would you turn to someone sitting at your table as a partner and share what you wrote? Make sure each partner has had an opportunity to share. I'm going to give you 15 more seconds. Thank you, everyone. What I'm going to ask you to do is just set that card aside for a moment. I don't want you to lose it, and I don't want you to lose your thought. But I also don't want you to forget what your partner told you about what was most important to him or to her when we begin our activities later this evening. Before we begin our primary presentation tonight, I'd like to share with you some background information that was shared to participants of previous Future Focus sessions. Our school district is comprised of 14 elementary schools that serve students in grades kindergarten through 5th grade. There are 5 junior high schools for grades 6 through 8 and 2 high schools serving grades 9 through 12. Our school district also serves preschool students ages 3 through 5 at the Ann Reed Early Childhood Center and special education students ages 18 through 21 in our Connection program located within the District 203 owned Naperville North Commerce Center located on 5th Avenue, which is across from our transportation office. Along with the Public Schools Administration Center, which is located on this campus, School District 203 owns approximately 30 acres of land in various locations throughout our community. Many of those acres are leased to the Naperville Park District. At the time of our organization into a school district, we served just over 9,000 students in our 11 schools. Today, our 22 schools serve approximately 17,300 students. Our elementary schools, including Ann Reed Early Childhood Center, educate nearly 7,400 students. There are currently just over 4,100 junior high school students. Our EC8 enrollment is just over 11,000 students. Our 2 high schools house almost 6,000 students. The peak for enrollment in our school district was just over 19,000. Back in session 3, Dr. Hester stated, as we consider the characteristics of successful schools, we must be looking toward the future. So while we're busy preparing students for today's world and what's happening today, we also need to think about what type of preparation those students will need for tomorrow's world and success in the future. The future demands we think and act differently to ensure the success of our schools, our students, and of our teachers and leaders. We need to adapt processes that allow us to approach change by being more proactive than reactive. In session 3, we talked about our needs of the future. District 203 schools of the future must create spaces that foster collaboration, enable effective communication, and allow for critical thinking and also inspire creativity. Our school community must recognize and celebrate that who we are is changing and how individuals learn in our schools is also different. Collaboration, Dr. Hester told us, has become the new norm. Perhaps when I think about this, when you and I went to school, our teacher would walk into his or her classroom, close the door, and go about the business in isolation. Today, and in schools in the future, teachers will share students across classrooms. They'll co-teach when needed. They will always engage in teams that review student work, and they must plan instruction collaboratively. Principals bring parents and community members into the school to support the social and emotional and academic programs. Collaboration opens the door to new ideas, new ways of doing things, and also to innovation. The key to improving schools and reaching high levels of performance is to adopt a philosophy of continuous improvement and a culture of sustained innovation. With a spirit of continuous improvement and sustained innovation, we'll deal with change much better. I hope you'll join me tonight in looking at our school facilities as places that will be ready to face the needs of our students in the future. I hope you'll consider the priorities you shared with us at the first Future Focus session. I hope you'll also rethink and consider the priorities that you've identified on your cards this evening. I hope you set priorities for our schools and how they'll look in the future, how they'll look tomorrow. We're not limiting ourselves to what we do today. Helping us tonight to think about our priorities is Brad Paulson. Brad is the Vice President for Business Development and PK-12 Education for White & Company. Since joining White & Company in 2000 as Director of the PK-12 Education Market, Brad has played an instrumental role in the evolution and growth of that firm. Brad is a core member of White's management team and plays an active role with many of White's school clients. As PK-12 education practice leader, Brad participates in the early planning stages of major educational projects and capital improvement programs. Brad is heavily involved in strategic client relationships, initial project planning, and new business growth initiatives across markets. Brad is a major contributor to the future and direction of White & Company due to his role in developing the firm's education, government, and corporate practices. Brad is a member of the American Institute of Architects and the Council of Educational Facility Planners International. He's authored articles on school planning, and his work has been cited by numerous national publications on issues relevant to school facility planning and design. In addition, he's spoken at several educational conferences. He's earned a Bachelor of Architecture and a dual Master's in Architecture and Science in Finance from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Proud to call him a partner and a friend. Please welcome Brad Paulson.
The writers sound make so important. Thank you for letting us come back. It's nice to be at Naperville Central High School, which is the first project that we designed for Naperville School District. Tonight, we're going to touch on 5 real quick topics that are relevant to facilities. First, we're going to just give a little quick introduction to who we are, so you have some framework for the work we've done for District 203 as well as other areas of Naperville. We're going to quickly recap the last decade or so of planning and facility improvements within the district. We're going to share with you how we're going to help the district look to the future and the process of developing a master facility plan, and then we'll introduce you to tonight's activities, which probably will be much more fun than listening to us. First off, I want to introduce 2 of my partners, Kevin Havens and Craig Siepka, who are in the corner. They actually were much more involved in making this space become reality, but I get the pleasure of talking in it. First off, a little bit about White. We've been in DuPage County for 74 years, family-owned business still, and our office currently is in Darien. K-12 education is by far our most prominent and significant market, and we've been working with District 203 since actually late 2007, providing design services for the school district. Some of the facilities that you will recognize that we've been involved in are this building, as well as the Ann Reed Early Childhood Center and the addition at Mill Street Elementary School on the north side. And we've worked at a variety of other projects since that time throughout the district.
As I mentioned, we, for District 203, are primarily just designer. We're architects and engineers. In other parts of Naperville, we've been involved on the construction side as construction manager. Some of the projects you might recognize, the Naperville Bank and Trust that was converted from the old post office, we served as the construction manager for that job. We've done several projects for the Park District, Seeger Park Interpretive Center, which is a very interesting building. I would encourage you to go there. It shares a lot of the same design characteristics as Ann Reed Early Childhood Center in terms of spaces for young kids. And speaking of older kids, Nike Park Sports Complex, we were the construction manager on that facility as well. Also doing work at the new Knock Knolls Nature Center way down on the south side, and have done a lot of work next door at Naper Settlement for their master plan and the follow-up projects. So a lot of experience not only within the school district but also throughout town, and a lot of our employees are residents and taxpayers and have a lot of kids in the schools that we're going to talk about here. So the past decade in District 203 has been very busy. For at least the past 10 years, the community members have been an active role in the building improvements, both in terms of planning the future, giving input, as well as helping shape the design decisions and some of the parameters we had to design around. It started back at the committee level in 2004 with the creation of a process by the board which led to and designed a detailed look at the schools. As you can imagine, with 21 schools, including 2 high schools, that process becomes very methodical, and it's not just a cursory view of the facilities. Following these studies, the board gave direction to a community task force that wound up bringing priorities and recommendations back to the board and follow up to the study work we did. As the board received those recommendations in 2006 and 2007, they went back out to the community for further analysis of options. This included some survey work to take the pulse of the stakeholders. And then for the past 4 years, the results of those efforts have been realized for some of the youngest learners as they turn 3, to those that just received their diploma this past spring at the high school level. So as we turn the page to that process, the past 10 years, the process of engaging the community and master planning the facilities has begun to renew itself, and that's why you're here tonight. So we're going to go through a process with your help and participation and looking to the future. So as the district looks forward in planning for the future needs of the schools, the students, the role that schools play in the community, an effective, comprehensive process needs to consider many issues, many of which have been kind of recapped tonight. The future focus is doing just that and looking at all the issues that need to be considered in developing a facility master plan. What are the expectations for student success? How do the curriculums and program now and plan for the future need to feed into that success? How do the finances support that? As well as how do the facilities support that? So these are all intertwined together and carefully crafted, and that's why the feedback you're going to give us tonight is so critical to at least how the facilities support the needs of the students. It is a little bit of a complicated process, so I'm going to kind of recap and share with you how the future focus process and the facility master planning process kind of dovetail together. Back in the spring of this year, the Future Focus 203 process started, and as Dan mentioned, there's been a series of workshops focusing on different aspects, and tonight we're here looking at how facilities support that student success. This summer, well, that will then lead to a process where the facilitating team makes recommendations to the board. I think it's in early December. This summer, we continue with a process that's been going on for a long time, as I just recapped, to restart the master planning process for the facilities, kind of taking the measure of where we are now, 10 years later, going through an entire process of assessing buildings, collecting data, and beginning to gather a bunch of information that will shape the next round of investment back in your buildings for your community. So some of the things we've gathered in our toolbox, so to speak, is capacity and enrollment numbers, which were discussions that took place about a year ago. We are nearly complete with a physical condition assessment, where we look at the condition of the roofs and mechanical systems and the enclosures and the sites to see how they're holding up, where's the deferred maintenance issues that have to be planned for. And we are just beginning a process right now where we talk about the educational alignment of those buildings. How well are the buildings set up to support the types of programs, the types of activities that you're teaching now, that the kids, the students of the 21st century need to have to create the right skills and practice habits. So I'll get into that in a little bit more, but what we're here for tonight is really how the feedback tonight is going to feed into that process. So the information we glean from you and the priorities and the activities we're going to have are going to help us take all that information and shape the master plan based on your priorities, your feedback, your ideas about what you want in your schools for District 203. So what are we trying to accomplish? What's our objective for this entire process? This is where we need your help. When you do community engagement around facility issues, there are some very basic objectives we want to strive for. Ultimately, the school district and the board needs to understand what they need to plan for, when they need to plan for it, and how much it might cost. To do this, we need to collect a bunch of information, make observations about the buildings, and do a lot of listening, absorbing and documenting information. So your input tonight is critical to shape the plan. We want to understand your priorities, and in turn, we hope you develop a deeper understanding of where education is going, how it requires a different physical infrastructure in the schools than the schools that we all went to. So what is a facility master plan? It needs to take into account all the issues and the feedback that have been brought forth from the Future Focus process. It will look at each building across the district as a whole, as well as individually, and have sufficient flexibility to respond to new forces that might come into play years down the road. Really, the goal is to make sure that past investment of taxpayer resources is protected and the buildings are most effectively aligned with the needs of students, along with the directions of the community, the board, and the educational leaders. So here's a little summary of graphically of the process that we go through. What I highlighted before is we've already gone through a process of collecting information. The enrollment figures, capacity issues, what's anticipated in the future. We've collected information about the physical conditions of the building that's nearing completion. The report's literally in the process of being finalized right now. That all goes into our bucket of the stuff that we create. Just really quickly to recap some of the physical conditions of the buildings. Overall, the buildings are in fantastic shape. The district has done a very good job of staying ahead as best as resources allow on top of the major issues. We're recommending to the administration just continue with the ongoing regular maintenance of the facilities that you've been doing, planning the work on an annual basis, and things are going to be great in terms of protecting the investment over the years. Some of the major issues, I can't even call them major, but these are the ones that are kind of more prominent in our findings were door hardware across the schools and keying systems. A couple locations we have exterior masonry tuck pointing issues to protect water infiltration from the building and the masonry structures. Electrical service upgrades, as you can imagine, with all the new technology and devices, that's always one of the bigger things we see across school districts. You're always going to have mechanical equipment and upgrades and replacements to improve energy efficiency and operational issues and make sure there's a good learning environment for the kids. And then a variety of just kind of finish issues that are monitoring over time, and we'll have some attention placed to them in terms of the floors and ceiling and the spaces where kids learn. What we're starting right now is what I mentioned is the educational alignment process. So that's going to be the third major input into the process, and then we're going to take the input we received tonight, and then again, of course, tomorrow morning, to filter that, and that will then lead into our facility master plan. And so that's the process we're just really kicking off. So educational alignment's the next step. Why do we focus on educational alignment? One of the terms that are usually used in kind of our circles are educational adequacy. We don't think that's really portraying the right way buildings should be looked at. We don't want school buildings just to be good enough for our kids for the future. Are they aligned properly with what students need in the future? So what we're really looking at is, are they aligned with the 21st century needs? So what I want to share with you is kind of a quick introduction to a video we saw. It's about 2 minutes. I might have to calibrate the sound a little bit. It is loud. But I will share this with you just to kind of begin to calibrate your thinking about 21st century schools and the role that teachers and the classroom plays in that. as we look at what a school building is in the 21st century, you're going to see many things in the schools, and those sites are being shaped and influenced by a lot of different forces. Probably the most significant factor is very simple, that children today are growing up in a different world. We all realize that. Our kids are growing up in a different culture, a different set of circumstances surrounding them, and the schools, for the most part, are aligned with a different function. So we can debate whether that's good or bad, but we cannot debate the facts that our children, the future leaders, the business people, educators, entertainers, and so on, have different measurements and definitions of what success is for them. My understanding is that defining student success has been one of the central focuses of the Future Focus process, and that translates directly back into the school buildings in the manner of programs and services that are offered, ELL, English language learners, the ability to break out into small group sessions, small group areas for small teams of students, special needs spaces for one-to-one work, and the itinerant staff that has to shuffle between across the school and across different schools, or project-based learning activities and having the flexibility to have that happen in the classroom or outside the classroom. We all know about the Common Core state standards that have been developed. How does that impact facilities? It doesn't really dictate how kids are going to learn. It's just what they should have achieved. It's still up to the local districts and the local teachers to figure out what is the right approach for their students to achieve success. One of the teachers in my own child's student's school in middle school, the teachers have created a whole new program where there's no homework. They're encouraging kids to bring technology devices to class, all about collaboration. It's all about thinking about a different way for students to achieve the state standard, the Common Core state standard. So there's lots of flexibility, and in many respects, the classrooms of yesterday don't support that type of activity, as well as the furniture, which is so critical to that process. Technology, everybody knows about technology. 10 to 15 years ago, every school had to have a computer lab, and every week a student got to go down to that computer lab. Now, the whole school is a computer lab. Kids are being told to bring their devices to school and don't turn them off. Bring them to class. Let's do activities with them. So where technology is going to be going and how the technology capabilities shape the future of the classroom, it's to be seen. So the master plan is going to help look at that direction. So given all that, we're going to engage in a process starting Monday, I believe, of dialoguing with teachers and staff at each individual school to begin exploring these ideas. And the input you give us tonight is going to help us provide a little bit more focus to that process. So really, if I had to summarize educational alignment, it's how do the buildings best balance purpose, function, and need in the schools. So things like the efficiency of buildings. We're going to provide a fresh set of eyes of looking at identifying new opportunities to how efficient the buildings are, areas that could possibly be used in ways that haven't been foreseen in the past. Adjacency of spaces are critical. Often over time as enrollments change and programs change, things get put next to things where maybe they're not ideal situations. You might have, for instance, a music room next to a special education program. So there's some things the adjacencies can get a little bit askew. Learning activities are often compromised by not only space, but furniture is so critical to supporting the types of activities that are taking place in the future. Equity is, of course, is a critical issue that we've read about, and something we're going to look at. All the way down to the spaces that students use to achieve 21st century skills and the 4 C's that are going to be created through the process. So we're going to begin the process of visiting schools, do a lot of listening and talking with staff. Hopefully some parents are going to be involved in that process, and that begins next week. So right now I'm going to kind of take a step back. We're going to kick off the activity process. Take my notes.
You're all right. First, I'd like to thank Dan Bridges and Brad Paulson again for the presentations, and especially the team from White and Company. We've had some great discussions with our facilitating team, and the time and effort they put into this session have been wonderful, and hopefully once you get into your activities, you'll see what they've developed for you. Most of you are familiar with our small group activity, but I need to go over it real quickly before Brad goes into the activity. You do have a pink sheet on your table, and you need to identify a facilitator and a recorder. Remember that the final document that we collect is the pink sheet, so the information that you're going to be discussing on your sheets need to be put onto the pink sheet. So you need to decide who's going to do that. And then also, again, just a reminder that this is the information recorded on the group's worksheet reflects the collective decision and general agreement and consensus of everyone at the table, not just the opinion of one or two individuals. We're going to let you know about your time and progress as we go through the activities. And again, at the end of the small activity, we'll be collecting the pink sheet, and we'll have you reporting out also.